Welcome back, friends. I'm your host, Dorina Gilmore-Young.
And I'm Sean Young, and you're listening to Season 2, Episode 12 of Walk, Run, Soar, a podcast about the intersection of faith and running.
We help runners and walkers who lack purpose with their exercise routine or lack of routine and long to experience God in a more meaningful way while they walk or run.
We are so excited to share this week's episode of the Walk, Run, Soar podcast with you. Our special guest is two-time Olympic 800-meter runner and Ohio State University cross-country coach and track distance coach, Khadevis Robinson. We chatted with Kadivis about his experiences as an Olympian, dealing with disappointment and failing forward, and also his philosophy on coaching.
Each week, I start by sharing a short word of encouragement from Scripture to help give you what I call a cool drink of living water before we go into our interview time. And many of these are adapted from our new devotional book, Walk, Run, Soar, which is available in all the places where books are sold. Also, I love to hang out on Instagram, and I'm always sharing fresh stories and new pictures from my running adventures. So follow me at Dorina Gilmore on Instagram. Today, we are going to talk about the idea of running the ultra marathon. Some days do feel like a glorious sprint to the finish line, but I'm learning that life is more often like an ultra marathon. Ultras are gaining popularity these days as more and more people look to push themselves to that next level. There are actually two types of ultra marathons. There are ones that cover a specific distance, which is anywhere from 31 to 100 plus miles. Yes, you heard me right. And those that last for a predetermined amount of time. My body actually just aches and creaks thinking about those extensive distances in hours because they require not just physical stamina, but incredible mental toughness as well. And then I started thinking about how we are in the midst of Holy Week. I think about how Jesus was the ultimate ultra runner. In his last week of earthly ministry, Jesus ran the ultra race of a lifetime. He told his disciples to prepare for the Passover feast. And during that meal, which is often celebrated on the Thursday before Easter, so tomorrow night, Jesus washed his disciples' feet as a radical expression of his deep love for them. He held up the bread and the wine and explained that his body and blood would be offered up for each one of them. And after that Passover meal, Jesus took his disciples to the Mount of Olives for his final message to them. He promised to send them the Holy Spirit to counsel, guide, and coach them. And Jesus then journeyed to Gethsemane, where he agonized in prayer. The course of the ultramarathon that he was running grew very challenging in that spot. As he finished praying, his disciple Judas came and betrayed him with a kiss. And he was arrested and taken to Annas, where he was sentenced to death for claiming to be the Son of God. Some of you know the story well. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, tried to convince the Jewish leaders and people of Jesus' innocence, but a mob gathered, and in a poor attempt to appease the crowd, Pilate had Jesus stripped, mocked, and severely beaten. And the mob was not satisfied and called for Jesus' crucifixion. This was not even the hardest leg of Jesus' final race. It's hard for me to even imagine the magnitude of it. Crucifixion was reserved for the worst and lowest criminals. The soldiers stripped Jesus and put a scarlet robe on him. They twisted together a crown of thorns, a great contrast to the laurel crowns awarded to Olympians for running and winning races, and pressed it into his head. And they spit on him and they struck him. And then he had to climb a great hill he had created where his hands and feet were nailed to a cross. The cross was hoisted up in the darkness, and Jesus hung there, crying out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And someone offered him a sponge of sour wine, but he wouldn't drink it. He was beyond dehydration. This was worse than hitting the wall, my friends. He exhaled his last breath, and this was the end. Well, some thought it was the end. But we know it was just the beginning of the story. The earth quaked with sorrow. His body was brought to a tomb that was closely guarded and covered with a heavy stone. And Jesus was separated from his Father for 3 long days. Can you imagine the loneliness and betrayal he endured on that journey? But on the 3rd day, an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and went to the tomb, and he rolled back the stone and revealed to the women who waited that Jesus was not there. And light refracted in all directions. He was resurrected, claiming victory over death. And shortly afterward, Jesus himself appeared to the women. They fell at his feet and worshiped him, their king, their savior, the greatest ultramarathoner of all time. They were witnesses to his race, wounds, and his healing. And then he sent those women to tell the others, and they ran. I love that the women were the runners. Running reminds us of Jesus' journey. Friends, running is hard, physically, emotionally, mentally. Those of us who have run half marathons and maybe even ultras, we know this well. Sometimes just getting ourselves out of bed in the morning feels hard. But doing hard things means we are following in Jesus' footsteps. Paul says this about following him in the hard things. He says in 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 10, some of my favorite verses, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. When we run this life race, friends, we will encounter trials, but we carry in our hearts the knowledge that Jesus himself ran this arduous race to the finish. And in our weakness, he imparts strength to us so we too might taste the glory of the finish line.
This week on the Walk, Run, Soar podcast, we have an extra special guest. We have a 2-time Olympic 800-meter runner who represented the United States. He has won multiple NCAA National Championships at Texas Christian University and a number of national titles as well on the senior circuit. His 800-meter PR is 1:43.68, which is outstanding. I can barely run one lap that fast. He is currently the head cross-country coach and distance track coach at Ohio State University. On our show today is Khadevis Robinson.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Welcome. We're so glad to be with you and just share your story with some of our listeners today. So I wonder, Kadivis, if you could start us off by just telling us about how you spend your days. What does your schedule and your household kind of look like during these pandemic times? And I know you're coaching as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because the ironic thing is when the pandemic came, it forced us all to spend time with family, right? So I'm married. I have 3 kids. And so during this pandemic, obviously the kids they've been home a little bit more. And to be honest with you, my wife has absolutely loved it because for one, I'm not traveling as much. As you guys mentioned, I'm a coach and typically I'm recruiting a lot or traveling at competitions. But this past year, we haven't been traveling as much. So it's been a lot of family time. It's been great to watch the kids grow. And, I try to work out every day just because that's my own way that I take care of myself. It's my antidepressant to work out. And so I get a workout in. I do some reading. I like to watch a lot of motivational stuff and spend time with family. And then also, I'm coaching. I can send workouts, online or send workouts via phone or Zoom. So I've been doing all those things at the same time.
Oh, that's wonderful. Just out of curiosity, how many miles a week do you run?
It's interesting because I don't really count miles. So
Okay.
I do minutes. So I try to average around anywhere between 30 and an hour every day. So it kind of makes people a little bit kind of nervous. They say, well, how do you, gauge everything if you don't count the mileage? And I say I do it by time, because what I do is my workouts are designed for a specific goal. So, and it's the same with my coaching. If my goal is to run a certain time for a 5K, then the workout kind of goes according to that. But for me, I try to get a certain amount of time in for my body. And to be honest, when I'm running, when I'm out there for a long run, that's what I'm thinking. That's my time to kind of be by myself, be with nature, and I can process all the stress and things that usually I'm worried about. I can process that while I'm running. So that's kind of what I'm doing. So sometimes I get lost in the run, and it's not even about, how far I'm going, but just how long I'm going.
Definitely can relate to that.
So tell us, how did you get started in running?
I'm from Texas, and, I played every sport. And then when I was in high school, what ended up happening, the football coach wanted the football athletes to run track to get in better shape and to get faster and all those types of things. So that's one of the reasons I started. Second reason is because I had a lot of friends that was running track. So obviously I wanted to be out there because my peer group was out there. And I always joke and I tell people the third reason is because there was a lot of girls out there. So I was like, hey, there's a lot of girls out here running around. I mean, this is the place I want to be. So that's kind of how I got started into running.
Let the truth be told.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, says my husband, who was out there with all the running girls as well. Well, I want to ask you a little bit about your Olympic career. We know that you're an 800-meter runner, and you were involved in the Olympics in 2004 as well as 2012. So that's quite a long time. And I want to hear a little bit more. What were some of the factors involved in your longevity in the sport and in that race in particular?
Well, when I first started, if you would have asked me how long I was going to run professional, my high school friends joked with me. That wasn't my goal. But as I got better in college, I started to see that as an option. And so obviously when I won the NCAA championship, it's like, okay, if you're the top guy in the nation, then you probably should try to make an Olympic team, right? So my goal at the time was to try to make the 2000 Olympic team. And if I made it, do as well as I could do. And then probably, at the time, my bachelor's degree is in social work. I wanted to go to law school or do something like that. What ended up happening is after I graduated from college, I went to run pro. Kind of did really, really well when I first got out. In 99, I won the USA Indoor and Outdoor Championships, made a couple of world championships teams. But in 2000, I missed the Olympic team. I ended up getting the dreaded 4th place. So what happened at that point, I was thinking, do I really want to call it quits before I make an Olympic team when I'm that close? I was defending champion. I got 4th, and I was predicted to win it. So I was like, you know what? I have to stick around for 4 more years just to give myself an opportunity to make an Olympic team. And lo and behold, I stuck around 4 more years to make the Olympic team, made the Olympic team, an absolutely great experience. But what happened after that, it was that I thought, you know what, my PR at the time was 144 or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I remember thinking I can run faster than that. So my goal from 2004 was more so, okay, let's try to break 144. That's a big barrier. Mm-hmm. And so as I continued to run, I ended up breaking 144. And so obviously, here comes the Olympics coming around a couple of years. It's like, do you really retire after you just ran a 143, which puts you in the, the high echelon of the top in the world? And the question was, no, you want to continue to run. So 2008 comes around. Obviously, I was in the best shape of my life, wanted to go for the Olympic team. And here we go again. I got 4th again, And so,
oh, man. Yeah.
I know. And so at that point, I had a very serious dilemma. The dilemma was, at this point, I was about 32 years old. At that time, I was married and had a son. And, I had ran a fast time and made an Olympic team. So, I was like, do I want to retire now? But I knew that God had put a little bit more in me, and I knew it was something else there. So I told myself, I'm not finished writing my book, so I have to continue at it. Now, I always remind individuals that whenever you decide to go for another 4 years to try to make an Olympic team, you're essentially making a decision to say, I'm going to stick around for 4 more years just for the opportunity to try to make it, because it's not guaranteed you're going to actually make it.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, you better be all in, you know, and at the level I was at when I was married, had a son. So now it doesn't only affect you, it affects your family. So that's a decision I made because, to be quite honest with you, not only did I want to do it for myself, I wanted to do it while my kids were, up and could go and see me compete. So that's the reason I stayed for another 4 more years. And then I made it in 2012, and that was it.
Amazing. Wow. Well, thanks for walking us through that. It's kind of exciting to hear, just what that process feels like behind the scenes and your decision-making process and how God led you.
At the 2008 Olympic trials, you were involved with one of the most memorable races I have ever watched. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to actually attend the 2008 Olympic trials. I did attend them in 2000 and 2004, so I'm sure I watched you race
Run around that
in
track.
those events. But 2008, I didn't make the trip up to Oregon, I believe it was.
Yep.
But in the 800-meter final, with the top 3 across the line, punching a ticket to Beijing that year, you finished, as you said earlier, 4th. But it wasn't just you finished 4th. It was the 3rd and 4th place finishers, that's Christian Smith and yourself, dove across the finish line in Superman fashion to decide who gets to go and represent the United States in China.
Yep.
Now, what can you tell us? What was going through your mind during those last 100 meters? You're coming to the final straightaway. You have the lead by just a hair. Take us through the last 100 meters.
Yeah. So what had happened even before then, leading up, the previous race before the Olympic trials was a Prefontaine Classic. And I ran that. I was literally in the best shape of my life. And I just didn't run a smart race. I ran a good race. I got 3rd or 4th or something like that. I can't remember what place I got. But I was just so upset at myself because I thought I missed the golden opportunity to win and run fast. So I was just upset. And after that race, literally right after the race, I did a little workout. And when I went back I trained in Santa Monica, California. I went back to Santa Monica, California. I worked out so hard. And my first workout I did, we used to do tempo runs. People thought I didn't do they thought I didn't do mileage and stuff, but I did. I actually did tempo runs year round, but either way, I was doing the tempo runs up on San Vicente and I was flying. And I remember like it was yesterday, someone who must have seen the race at Prefontaine was saying, "Man, I just saw you race the other day and you already up here flying," as he drove by. And when I did that, and this is not to make any excuses, but I overdid it. And so I give you that backdrop to say, when I went to the trials, if you look at the results, if you go look at the rounds, the first round, I barely made it through. I got like 5th or 6th. And I was in the first section. And some way, by the grace of God, the other sections didn't go fast enough to eliminate me. And you would have thought they would have because I had been in every final for the past whatever years, but they didn't. And so I made it through. And then the second round, I won my section, but I knew something was off. I could tell. And it looked like I was doing great, but it wasn't. So I tell you all that to say, during the final, as I sat on the line, I was extremely stressed. And so what kept going through my mind was, okay, if I go out and take the lead, then I know these guys are going to sit on me. And remember, this is 2008. So again, I'm 32 years old. So you got a whole bunch of 21, 22, 23-year-olds. Mm-hmm. So I knew at that time they had watched me enough to know that that's the way I ran. They was going to sit on me. So I was like, do I want to do that? Or do I want to sit? But the problem is when I was sitting and kicking at that time, my body wasn't how it should have been. So I was battling with that. And so finally I told myself, I said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go for it. And you're going to make everyone have to run a personal best or run the best they've ever run to beat you. And if they do that, what can you do? If everybody run the best they can run, then, hey, that's all you can do. And so that's what went through my head as I went through the race. And as we was coming down the final stretch, I was just like, I'm going to give everything I have and I'm going to make those guys run the best they've ever run before. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2 of them never ran any faster or never made another team. Nick Simmons obviously ended up doing a little bit better. But I'm saying, so that's kind of what went through my mind, that, okay, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down fighting, and I'm going to make sure everyone else has to really. So when they look back, they're going to say, you know what, man, I raced KD, I raced Kadivis, and maybe I beat him. But you know what? He used to always run my butt to the ground. He's always made me earn it. And that was my philosophy.
Oh, I love it. You pushed him all the way to the finish line, even if you were hurting. Well, that's actually a good segue into the next question, because I think that's a mind of a coach right there. You were going to push everybody else who was on the field. And I would love to hear about your journey into coaching. You've coached at UNLV and LSU, and now you're at Ohio State. Tell us about that calling. Why did you want to pour into collegiate athletes?
It kind of called me, to be quite honest. So my background, my bachelor's was social work, and my master's degree is public administration. So I'm a guy about being a servant. Mm-hmm. And so as I was still running professionally, I had a nonprofit called the Youth Track and Running Club. And I coached pro athletes also. So one of my athletes, she was coaching high school, but she ended up getting a collegiate job, and she had to leave quickly. So she wanted me to take over her high school job. And I said, no way, I'm not going to do it. But she said, KD, you would love it. You'll be great with the kids. So I ended up coaching at a school called Louisville High School. It's an all Catholic girls private high school. I loved it. I mean, I loved it. And so that kind of started it. And from there, I got an opportunity to go to UNLV and coach there. And so from that point on, it just kind of kept going. And for me, the thing is, my philosophy is this. My philosophy is coaching. It's not about me. I've been fortunate enough to have had some success. So this is not about my ego. It's not about me patting myself on the back. But if I could be an influence in some of these student athletes' lives like the coaches were in my life, then to me, that's a success. And the coaches I look up to and I call and I still talk to and all that, they wasn't necessarily the coaches that helped me win a national championship. They were the coaches that I knew truly felt had my best interests in mind. Those are the coaches that I can call even now, some 20, 30 years, maybe 35 years later. And I know they're going to give me the best advice. And it has absolutely nothing to do with how good of an athlete I was. Mm-hmm. And so I think nowadays, sometimes we get lost in the shuffle, especially on the collegiate and pro circuit. When we was kids, a coach was an extension of the family. Your parents could leave you at school. Your coach could bring you back home. You could spend a night over there. They could feed you if something went wrong. I mean, coaches was an extension of the family. Yeah. And I liked that. And it made such an influence on a lot of our lives. A lot of times now, I don't know if it's still the same way. Mm-hmm. So for me, getting into coaching, I understood that, and this is my own personal philosophy, is that I think the universe or God or whatever you believe in sends us all here for a purpose. Yeah, I want to do well. I want my athletes to run well and all those types of things. But the reality is, if I could be an influence on some of these student athletes' lives, like the coaches were in my life right now, then that's a success, even if they don't win a conference championship or a national championship.
That is so powerful. And I can think about even my own coaches that had an influence, kind of the same thing. It was like an extension of the family. I love how you said that. Now that we're coaching high school and our daughters are running and thinking about that influence as well.
I remember after one of your track meets, or likely you probably said it after multiple of your track meets, possibly, that during a television interview, you said a setback is a setup for a comeback. I think that's one of the lines you use. Yep. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think in life, we're all going to have setbacks, right? And so it's not necessarily the setbacks that we have, it's how you respond to them. And we've all heard that cliche before, right? It's not what happens, it's what you do. But that's really, that's actually true. A setback is a setup for a comeback if you don't give up, right? Mm-hmm. So what can happen is when you have a setback, if you can use that as fuel, then it can motivate you for what you're doing next. So for example, I tell everyone, 2008 was one of the best things that ever happened. Now, people say, why? I'm going to tell you why. Before 2008, before the trials when I got 40, I didn't necessarily know I was running professional track and field. I wanted to make an Olympic team. I could make some money. I could, be on TV or whatever that may be. I wanted to win, but I'm a guy that thinks a little bit deeper than that. So I never really knew, because at that point I had, I had got my master's degree. And at that point, I had some money saved up and I was married. And so I could have moved on and been all right. I was always asking myself, why am I still competing and why am I still running? And I couldn't get an answer. 2008 helped me answer that. So what happened was, because I didn't make the team in 2008, because it was so dramatic, and as I dove and Christian dove and he made it, the film and the video panned on me and you can see the expression on my face. And as I walked off, I remember coming off and I remember people asking me questions and I remember telling them, if this is the worst thing that happened to me this year, I'm a blessed man. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening was, as I walked off, I saw my wife and she was distraught and kind of crying and down. And I saw my coach and he just couldn't believe it. But at the same time, I saw my 7 to 8 month old son and he was like, Dad. And so what I realized was this: my son, he didn't know what had happened. All he knew was Daddy was here and around. Daddy left. I heard a whole bunch of noise. And now Daddy's back and I want him to pick me up. Mm-hmm. It put that in perspective. And so what ended up happening is, it's very ironic how the universe and God works, because remember, I missed the team and got fourth in 2000 also. But when I missed it in 2000, when I went back to Santa Monica, I remember vividly sitting in my apartment twiddling my thumbs. Now think about that. Here I am, a year to 2 years out of college. I'm already was a national champion. I'm young. I have a contract. I've traveled the world. And just because I didn't make the Olympic team, I was pretty much distraught and depressed, as if nothing else mattered. And I'm in my apartment. I'm in Santa Monica, California, one of the most amazing places in the world to live. I'm in LA right there. The beach is 10 minutes away. And I was about as sad as you can be. And I remember thinking about that. So what happened in 2012, I was a little bit better prepared for that failure. I was able to fail forward. And so as I made it back to Santa Monica, same apartment, of course, I had a wife and a son at this time. I went to Venice Beach, which is only about a 10-minute drive, if that. And Venice Beach, this is in the summer. Remember Olympic trials, and it was packed. And so when you live in those places, you don't go to those places a lot because you live there, and you definitely don't go when it's super packed, right? When it's super packed, you're like, I'm gonna stay away because everything's more expensive. It's crowds, parking's tough. But I just went, and I went for a walk. I didn't have on USA stuff. I was just blending in. And as I walked on the Venice boardwalk, it was an African guy selling incense. I didn't know him from Adam. I was just walking. And he stopped and he said, Kadivis, KD, oh my goodness. And as he did that, the crowd stopped, because you're in LA, so it's like you could be anybody. So people thinking maybe this is some star, but he's going, Kadivis, don't retire, man. I love your interviews. I love your post-race interviews. I love how you went for and you took it out, and you're older than all those guys. You motivate me. Your videos and your interviews, they make me hype. And he started telling me all this stuff on a Venice boardwalk in the summer. And I'm standing there and people are looking at me and I'm like, and I don't know this guy. And I remember thinking like, wow, I've had that type of influence. So what I realized is this: as the next year and the next year passed, I kept having grandmas and mothers and coaches come up to me and say, hey man, when I was screaming at the TV, and when you didn't make it, I felt so bad. And I want you to know, my grandson, he always says your quotes, and my cousin, he takes it out like you takes it out, and you're in it. And I started noticing like, man, now the ironic thing is, if I would have never had that setback, I would have never known those things.
Yeah.
Because when I was doing so well and up here, they never felt comfortable coming up to me and saying those things. But as they saw me as being vulnerable, they said, you know what? I got to let him know that we're cheering him on. I got to let him know that we're backing him. I got to let him know that we felt that and to keep going. Because no matter if you win or lose, that gives us motivation. And it's and I remember thinking like, wow, that's why I run. This is a vehicle for me to do other things. So as I went from 2008 and 2012, now I ran with a different purpose. You see, it wasn't just to run to win or to make a team or to make some money. I was running because I know through my running, winning or losing, I'm motivating somebody else. I'm inspiring somebody else. I'm giving somebody else confidence. I'm bringing some more people to the sport. And it just changed the dynamics of why I was competing and running and doing the whole process. And that's why I say a setback is a setup for a comeback. Because once you come back, you understand everything that happened before you a little bit better than you did before.
Wow. It shapes the influence, just shaped your why. That's beautiful.
Yep.
It reshaped it.
Yeah, I like to talk to our athletes. Actually, we were just talking about it yesterday about asking them, what's your why? Why are you coming out for the track team? Because if you don't have a strong why, you need a strong why to motivate you to keep pushing hard, to suffer when you're out there at practice.
And for the kids, I think it's, when they're that young, we might have to phrase it a little bit differently, because as adults, when you say why, WHY, we understand what we're trying to get to. The kids, a lot of them are not there yet. They can't, they can't process it in the same way. So I think we have to ask questions to get to their why. And as we ask them the questions, then they'll find it out themselves. So for instance, in my favorite book, God said, hey, Adam, where you at? Where you guys at? He's asking them questions through the first part. Yeah. Well, God knows where everybody's at, right? So it's like, so
true story.
What's the question for? And then he says, I'm hiding. And he says, where are you hiding? Why are you hiding? Well, God already knows. The question is for Adam to go, well, hold on. Why am I hiding? I can't hide from God. That makes so I'm hiding because I know I've done something wrong, right? That I shouldn't have done. So so now you start to think, well, you know what? I did something wrong. I'm hiding. It doesn't make any sense. It makes you think. So I think it's the same thing with sometimes with kids. It's like, if we ask them enough of those questions, then now they'll start getting it. And then later we come and say, what's your why? Now they've thought about it. Now they're not trying to give us an answer they think we want or an answer that sounds good. Now it's like, you know what, coach? Or you know what, mom? When you ask me those other questions, I didn't know this. And now I know, so that I had to learn that through this whole process of me coaching also.
That's so good. Yeah. And it's interesting how even for us now, the kids are like, oh, here comes coach. She's going to ask us a question again, another sharing question. But I love your example from Genesis in the Bible that, God would ask those questions as a point of reflection and as a point of establishing relationship between him and Adam and many others throughout his word. So that's such a great example. I'm sure our listeners can probably tell already, but you are a motivational speaker. And I wanted to ask you about that. Do you have a core message that you like to bring your audience?
Yeah. Well, my core message is I have a couple major things happen in minor moments. But the truth is there are no minor moments. Major things happen when we make them happen. Now, what does that mean? It means we think major things only happen at the Olympic Games, when we get married, at a funeral, when you graduate. But the truth of the matter is major things are happening all the time. And, and when we want certain goals, it's upon us to make those major things happen. Sometimes we want them to just happen to us. But if we realize that at this moment, there's an opportunity for those major things to happen, then we'll proceed in that direction. So that's one of them. My second one is, developing the champion's mindset. So during this break, I've done a lot of corporate speaking engagements, because what happens is, just like your athletes, and you'll relate to this, a lot of your athletes, they do the training and they have the talent to be successful, or the talent to win, or the talent to run fast. They have it. They got the physicalities. So why isn't it clicking? Well, it's a mindset. To winning and being a champion is actually a mindset. And it's a skill set also, but the good thing about a skill set is that it can be developed. So one of my major themes is developing the champion's mindset, the way that the winners and champions think. And once you're able to see these little small things, then things make a difference. I'll give you an example. They were talking about Tom Brady and why is Tom Brady so good? Well, what happens is Tom Brady when he went to the Bucs, he told the center, he said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to put a whole bunch of baby powder down your pants. And I want you to stick a whole bunch of towels in your pants. And the guy was thinking to himself, like, I've been a center my whole life. This is ridiculous, right? This is absolutely ridiculous. But he says, Tom Brady, right? So if it's Tom Brady, I'm at least try it. And he tried, and he realized what he did. It kept that area from being so sweaty, which kept the ball from being as sweaty, which you get the point. So it kept it from him slipping and all that. So my point is, but it's a different way who thinks like what Tom Brady does. And that's why he's Tom Brady, because he thinks a little bit differently. I have individuals that are super successful and they'll want to meet and they'll talk about this. And you would think, okay, they're already successful, but so why would they need to meet with a Khadevis Robinson about developing the champion's mindset? Well, here's the thing. A lot of people that are super successful and they have a lot of money and they say they're not happy. They're not happy. I call it and this is, and hopefully this doesn't sound wrong, but I call it the Anthony Bourdain thing. What I mean by that is Anthony Bourdain is an amazing guy. I used to watch his show. Loved Anthony Bourdain. Had what I would argue one of the best jobs in the world. Like traveling the world, eating exotic foods, going all these places. Everybody wanted to see his show, and yet he committed suicide. So what I'm saying is about the champions is winner mindset. It's not about just the successes, and it's not about just the money and the progress. It's about how you relate to those. Why do you want the money? Just getting what happens to athletes? We all know athletes that in college, they were number one pick, one of the best, and they go to pros, you don't hear from them no more because they only wanted the money. They only wanted to get to the NBA. And once they got to the NBA, they made it. Now what? We made it. I'm in the NBA. I'm in the NFL. And so what happens is when you put that purpose behind that, then it changes everything. And that's why when you have individuals like, Jeff Bezos' wife, and you have individuals like the Warren Buffett, all these people that they have all these different foundations and stuff that they're trying to do, it keeps them motivated to keep going forward. Mm-hmm. It's more than just the money, right? Yep. Tom Brady has enough money, right? The top people, they have enough of those things, but they have a why behind them. So for me, that's what I do with my motivational speaking. And when you live on purpose, it allows others to live on purpose.
And I also wanted to ask about the Kadivism that you've got on your shirt. What in the world does that mean? So tell us about hashtag Kadivism.
The hashtag Kadivism is living authentically for what your purpose is on this universe. That's what it is. A lot of times, and I know you guys will be able to relate to this, a lot of times when we tell individuals, we show the world what we're going to be and what we're going to do, people look at us crazy. They think something's wrong with us. They think we're crazy. They think we're being whatever. And Kadivism is for an individual to not fall into that trap. Meaning when you say you want to be whatever that is, and somebody else say you can't, or they look at you crazy, don't fall into that box. See, here, most people, if they can't put you in a box, they can't put you in a certain place. This is what humans do. We see everything, we put them in these different little categories. Mm-hmm. So most people, if they can't put you in a category, they throw you away. They think something's wrong with you. They think something's odd with you. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is all the really, really great ones, you can't put them in a category. That's why they want the great. So Kadivism is being all right with not being put in someone else's category. Never let someone else build your world for you because they'll always build it too small, and never let someone else's opinion of you become your reality. That's what Kadivism is, because we weren't meant to be like everyone else. We was meant to be authentically ourselves. And that's going to throw some people off. And it might not even make us rich. It might not make us the most popular. It might not make us the most famous. But see, that's not your why. See, the reason I coach wasn't to be the most famous or the most rich or the most popular. Mm-hmm. So once you recognize that and you say, well, this person don't like me, then you go, well, hold on. I don't coach because I wanted people to like me. Mm-hmm. I didn't coach to make a lot of money. That's what Kadivism is. Right now, in the day of social media and the world we live in, we lose track of that. Mm-hmm. And then by yourself, and people look at you and they go, what's up with this person? You want to now put yourself in a box and say, you want to explain it to them. Well, no, it's not up to you to explain to them why you are you. God made you. It's up to them to figure out the space you're in, the positive space you're in. If there's a space that they want to navigate in, yes or no. But either way, if God put you here for a purpose, when it's time for that train to leave, it's leaving, whether they're on it or not.
Yep. Good words. Good words. How does your faith influence your coaching? How does that impact the way that you influence others?
What I do is I tell people to borrow my belief in you until your belief kicks in. As a coach, I want you to borrow my belief in you until your belief kicks in. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example. A woman that a car fell on her child and she ran and she said, God, please let me be able to pick this car up. And she picks that car up and get her child on it. She's going to believe a little bit probably differently than someone who didn't have that experience. Mm-hmm. You see? Mm-hmm. So I understand that. Use that belief as power, And for me personally, it's everything. Because there's been times in which me personally, I've wanted to just quit, just say, forget it. Mm-hmm. And I've had to have a reflection and pray and all those types of things. And that's the only thing that kept me from quitting and being where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, earlier you mentioned the story in Genesis about Adam and Eve. I'm just wondering, is there any passages in the Bible, a story or a verse or something that motivates you personally?
It's so many that it's amazing. But I think it's two that I think about the most. One of them is the story of Jonah, because if you really read that passage, what it's talking about, Jonah's on this boat, and I'm guessing you guys know the story. And the other sailors on the boat is like, man, we finna go into a storm. It's finna sink. Yeah. And Jonah essentially says, hey, it's going to keep coming because I think God's upset at me. And they like, huh? He said, I think God's mad. And they said, why? Because I'm running from something. I'm running from my responsibility. Mm-hmm. So those sailors say, hold on, you mean to tell me God's mad at you and the sea's going and we're going to sink because you on here? So they throw him over. He said, get out of here.
Right.
As he gets out, he gets swallowed in this well, right? Now, that well's representing he's in a situation in which he cannot get out of, which means there comes a time in our life which we're running from what God is telling us we must do. And we run from it, and we find out that no matter where we run to, we run into more problems. Until what happens is we don't even feel comfortable in all those other places, and they don't feel comfortable around us because we're running from ourselves. So we get stuck in a situation where it's like, it's no more running now. You got to face it.
Yep.
And once Jonah realized, you know what? I got to go face my destiny. That will spits him out. So I love that verse because we've all had those experiences. Yeah. We've all had experiences where we thought everything was lined up to do this, and it just kept not working out. And we knew, man, I'm trying my best to be a lawyer, but I'm supposed to be a teacher. I'm trying to be a lawyer. Nothing's working out. I'm trying to be a lawyer. Nothing's working out. And he's like, I need to be a teacher. And you go be a teacher, and now you're just the happiest you can be. Until we realize we're running from our destiny, and we're knowing that that's what we need to be. But until we can't run no more and we go toward our destiny, that's when things work out. When I was at TCU, when I was first deciding I want to get into social work, I used to volunteer. We had to volunteer, do some volunteer hours. I volunteered and I worked at a school that was right next to TCU. And I just did it because I had to, right? And I worked with all these different kids. So we didn't have internet and Facebook and all that when I was in school. So some years later, when I'm in Santa Monica, I get a Facebook friend request. And it was from a guy. I didn't know who the guy was. He had a little hair on his chin, whatever. And he said, Coach Robinson. He said, yeah, Mr. Robinson. That's what it was, Mr. Robinson. And I already knew something was up then because this is only a couple of years out of college. So who's calling me Mr. Robinson then? Mr. Robinson. and everybody calls me Kadivis and KD. But anyway, he said, my name is such and such. He said, I'm that little kid that you volunteered with at that school right next to TCU. He said, I remember when you used to say, he named some stuff I used to say that I didn't even remember saying it. And he said, I wanted to thank you because right now I done graduated from high school, in the military, going to college, and it made such a difference. And I got chills because I didn't know. I didn't know that what I was saying and what I was doing could have that much of an influence. He made sure that after this had to be 8, whatever years it was later, to contact me and tell me how much of a difference it makes. That's the difference that coaches make. I really believe that. And when we don't give that to some kids, we miss the 8 ball because some kids are waiting. The only compliment those kids are getting, the only time they've heard, I know you can do it, it's from you. Yeah. The only time they've heard, I'm proud of you. See, you can see a runner, a kid can get 14th place in a race, and a coach can go up to them and say, I'm so proud, you ran a PR, you got 14, you did better, you did. And that same kid, when they get B's or whatever, they never get that type of praise. They've never gotten it in anything. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But as a runner, they're getting it even though they wasn't the top one. And it gives them confidence to move forward. Mm. And if you didn't give it to them, maybe they'll never get it.
Wise words. Well, Kadivis, we thank you for your time today. Can you tell our listeners how best can they support you in what you're doing? How can they get in contact with you?
At Kadivis on everything, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So the best way is truly either Instagram or LinkedIn. I do a lot of online coaching and online mentoring, and most of that comes through LinkedIn or Instagram. And that's how you can just follow me on those. I post a good amount on both of those platforms. And I'm getting ready for the NCAA Championships right now and enjoying life, and I'm just waiting for now this this whole pandemic is getting over. So I'm ready to start back traveling, man. I'm ready to get back to do some international travel.
Ready to get out there. Well, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. And we just love hearing your story and just all the inspiration that you shared with our listeners today. Yeah. Take care.
Thank you, guys. Right. Thanks for having me on.
This week's coaching tip is about good form. Good form can transform your speed, reduce injuries, and increase your running enjoyment. Run tall with your hips high and a slight forward lean from your ankles, not your waist. Also, this will help you breathe easier and give your legs a greater range of motion. Keep your shoulders relaxed and those arms pumping. Keep your elbows bent at about a 90-degree angle. And the faster you pump your arms, the faster your legs will follow. Do you have any coaching questions? Send a message to Dorina on Instagram at Dorina Gilmore. I'll try to incorporate these in future coaching tips. We would like to invite you to join Glory Chasers Christian Running Group on Facebook. This is a place where we gather with runners and walkers and serve up free coaching, courage, and community. It's a great place to meet other Christian runners from around the world and cheer each other on.
Friends, we cannot believe that we have made it to the end of season 2. That's 24 episodes that we have shared with you about walking, running, and soaring. And I just wanted to share with you a few more details about our book, Walk, Run, Soar. If you haven't got a copy of it yet, it is most definitely a continuation of what we do here on the podcast. It's a 52-week devotional and training journal designed for runners and walkers who long to experience God's presence in a deeper way. And so we invite you to check that out. It's never too late to incorporate this book. It's not a book you have to start in January. You can start it in March or June or November, and you can do it with friends or on your own. There's spaces for reflection and even recording your mileage. And if you already have a copy, please, please, please share a review on Amazon, because this is one of the ways we can multiply this message. And Amazon actually shares it with other vendors and with other people as they're looking at their Amazon account. So it's really important to us.
Please head over to Dorina's website at www.dorinagilmore.com and sign up for her weekly Glorygram. This is the best way to stay in touch with us more personally and to get a curated list of resources and coaching tips. We look forward to connecting with you there.
Thank you, friends, for joining us for season 2 of Walk, Run, Soar. It's been a joy to serve you in this way. Sean and I really look forward to putting together these podcasts, and we'll be taking a break for the summer. But we want you to know that we are cheering you on to the finish line.